So good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. Today we have a repeat offender. We have Mr. Raphael Heffron, who we spoke to a few months back regarding COP26. We'll be revisiting that topic. So welcome back, Raphael. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be back.
And you've had some very interesting changes in the past couple of months. Why don't you tell people what you're up to now? It's very exciting.
Yes, I've switched over from when I spoke to you last. I've switched from Scotland over to the University of the West Indies. So I'm now the Dean of the Faculty of Law in the St. Augustine, Trinidad and Tobago. So speaking to you from a much warmer climate, and let's say being originally Irish, I'm keeping to the island mentality, living down here, and hoping to make an impact and teach and learn new things about sustainability, justice, energy, environment, climate change. So, for your listeners, they should begin watching what is going to come out from the University of West Indies over the next few years.
Yes, because you and I discussed the fact that the islands are affected very easily by climate change. And part of your role is discussing energy, climate change, and just transition, which is something we discussed quite a bit in our last webcast, where I titled it, Is America to Blame for Climate Change? Which a lot of people took offense to. And, it has to stir up a conversation. So if you could just dive in real quick, your takeaways on COP26, and let's talk about America and our role in this.
Well, I mean, my initial takeaways would be positive. And I know a lot of people said, no real agreement, solid agreement was reached, etc., etc. But I mean, I thought this COP conference was on everyone's mind, let's say, even if it was just a short time. People were more familiar, the wider public was more familiar with this COP conference than ever before. And we should take that as a huge positive, that if the momentum, if we keep building that momentum, I think, it is going to be great. And it was good to see all the young people who turned up and, let's say, from giving talks to protesting. For me, that's a sign of something that we need to continue. We need more active engagement and let's say, moving forward, what we want is, we do want that change. And I think there will be some changes people don't realize as a result of this COP26 conference. And my belief is that investors will be looking very closely at what they invest in the future. And that's probably where we will see a lot of change.
Yeah.
For your second question in terms of America, I mean, Joe Biden came into power with a big proposed climate change agenda. I'm not sure, as a sort of the US as a lead country in many areas, I'm not sure he committed the US to, I think he could have done a lot more.
Ah, that's interesting. What would you have liked to have seen different?
I would have liked to see them push some of the other countries a bit more. For example, why they didn't push Australia a bit more to sign up to some of the agreements that were signed. And I think there was a bit too much other politics going on, let's say, back in America, but also internationally with the row with Australia and France happening before the conference. And I think the US could have committed more money. I think more money could have been committed to climate change initiatives, clean energy initiatives back back in the US. Why did we not see that? Maybe because there's other issues going on, but I thought for the US, it was an opportunity missed after the Trump years.
Our little nap from climate change.
Exactly, and if you take that analogy, a nap from climate change under Trump, I think in many cases the US under Biden has barely woken up.
Yeah, it is slow. I mean, the country's divided right now. I think that's obvious to anyone internationally. We have a two-party system, which we have extremes on both sides, and people for some reason aren't willing to have that chat in the middle that we used to benefit from. But yeah, it's a lot of talk, very little action, in my humble opinion. With respect to committing more money, I mean, it may have been they were desperately trying to get that infrastructure deal passed. And that went back and forth for a long time. And I was personally surprised at how quickly it did pass. I thought it was going to be stuck in debate and argument forever. So I'm personally glad that that happened. And with talking about renewable energy, clean energy, and the financial institutions, this is sort of their green light for private equities to get involved and build our infrastructure, which is crumbling. It's not great right now, but also get things electrified, whether it's through solar, wind, geothermal, hydrogen, whatever works for wherever you happen to be. We need to start pulling that trigger and just getting it done.
Yeah, and I also think the education system needs to get active, because climate change science is accepted by nearly, I believe the figure is around 99% of scientists globally. So what's happening at the US universities, some of the most well-funded universities in the world, and what's happening that there seems to be a reluctance, or by the Republican Party and their supporters, as if they don't support climate change, or they don't agree with it. And I wonder what is happening at the university level, where all the scientists are nearly united in the same view, and why are they failing to get that point across to the graduates? And those graduates, in turn, learn at the universities and should be going out to the schools and talking about climate change, to children from 5 to 18.
Oh, no, I agree. I mean, I used to do something called Family Fridays on the show where I'd interview kids. And it kind of fell apart because a lot of parents don't want their kids on social media. So I get it. But I actually had some children between probably 8 to 15. And they are so knowledgeable. They know so much about the environment and clean energy and why it matters. I was hugely impressed. They actually knew much more than I thought they would. That being said, I'm also talking to parents who are like-minded to me. So not necessarily parents who don't believe in climate change. And yes, people do send me articles of that one scientist out of the 99% that doesn't agree with climate change. And people send that to me over and over again saying, see, you're wrong. It's like one guy went Fruit Loops and decided to say it's not climate change, but you're ignoring the 99%. So there is a problem. Absolutely. I agree with you on that. We need to not politicize it. The fact that sea level's rising, storms are more treacherous. We have erosion like we've never had erosion before. And you're going to see that, being in the West Indies. Storm surges, hurricanes, things are just going to be a little bit rougher. So yeah, education is huge. What you're doing is very important. And we need people to actually act on things and implement instead of having more conferences, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, well, I think it's about changing and doing more in terms of communication. So let's say the university message, they're clearly not getting the message out in the US, and there needs to be a reflection and say, how can we ensure that we are getting that message out, and climate change is real. And it's not just the US. I mean, Australia too, even some parts of the UK. But we need to get that, change the message to make sure it impacts more and more people.
In simplified terms, and that's why I created this webcast, is I knew a lot of people that didn't understand climate change, and quite honestly, they said, I don't care. I don't understand it. It doesn't affect me directly. I don't care. And also the jargon, or when people talk in acronyms, it's exclusionary language. You're not including everybody. And when people experience that, they tend to shy away from it. So communication outreach will be the winner of all of this, because if you're not going to get the general public engaged, it doesn't matter how many corporations pull up. You got to have everybody together on this one.
Yeah, and it is a collective effort.
Yeah,
and
across borders as well. It's not just a country by country thing. It's one planet.
Yeah. No, and that's, let's say, that's part of my own work and teaching, which focuses on that transition to a low carbon economy, that move. And let's say it's also, there's also an element of a technology race, and that's why I think it's very important, let's say, for many countries, particularly in the US. If you want to keep ahead of the energy technology, you have to commit those resources into that technology.
Yeah.
And we've been using coal for nearly 200 years commercially. It's let's say, there's a great song from opera. It's time to say goodbye. I think Bocelli, can't remember its full name, but anyway, you can look it up on YouTube. Very good song, and I think we should be singing that song to the coal industry at the very least. And we should be welcoming new technology. And just a quick similar scenario. If I asked you to use a mobile phone from 20 years ago, you would probably laugh in my face and say, well, why would I do that when I can use an iPhone 13 with every single thing on it? And it's the same. It's the same way. Why do we still use this old technology when we have this much better technology, and that has even more of a future in terms of how we develop, let's say, for example, solar energy in future?
Well, it's interesting. Part of the hesitancy is because I obviously I talk to a lot of people. Job creation, what people are making salaries in the petroleum industry, it doesn't translate directly in the renewables. So there has to be a just transition for people's livelihoods. I get that. But also people are terrified of change. They just don't want to do something different. It's weird. I mean, again, I always tell people, what do you love about exhaust fumes? Please tell me. Because, they said, oh, it doesn't work. Oh, it's this, it's that. You can throw anything at me. I will always say exhaust fumes. Because isn't it better to not have that? I mean, solar, wind, geothermal, everything. It's a clean energy.
Yeah. In terms of a just transition, to me, I think there are 2 points to reflect on that in terms of what you said. I mean, okay, we need to ensure a just transition, but we need to be also thinking that there will be jobs for engineers in cleaning up after these different types of infrastructure. So those jobs will be there, but we should also be a bit more, let's say, have this wider perspective when we think of a just transition, because if you worked in a nice job in a nice restaurant and you get paid X amount, if that restaurant starts having shoddy service and shoddy food, it goes out of business.
Mm-hmm.
We don't come along and say we're definitely going to find you another job because you lost your job in that restaurant, we'll find you another one and with the exact same pay. I mean, we hear the Republican Party go on about free market economics, etc., etc. So why are they looking for compensation for these workers, in the energy sector? Should we? My question to you would be: should we not let them go out of business? I mean, let's take coal for example. They've had a good run. They've lasted for 200 years. I mean, should we subsidize them now that they're near the end? I don't think so. We don't subsidize bad restaurants. We don't subsidize other bad businesses. They go out of business.
Yeah.
So what is exceptional about these businesses that we would subsidize them?
I think it goes back to the fear of change. I mean, these places have been getting subsidized from the government for decades, getting tax breaks. None of that makes sense to me, but I think we need to pivot away from that, but also provide, training for people to, it's not like going from a waiter in a bad restaurant to a waiter in a good restaurant. It's going from being, the guy who does the dishes and saying you're now the chef. So same industry, but very different. And, without proper training, you're not going to succeed. So I'm a huge advocate for proper training. I think giving people opportunities to change is important, but we do need to stop limping along.
Agreed, and I think that's where the key point on a just transition should be. The just transition should be directly focused on the people, not, let's say, as a bailout to companies. And the people should be given the opportunity to do what they want, and let's say spend that money, whether it be individually or by let's say a local community committee, and they should be the decision makers, and it should not be used to, let's say, subsidize jobs in coal, or in even oil and gas in some countries, but it should be given to the people so that they can we can make sure that no one is left behind.
Yeah, and also, the petroleum and coal industry are very high hazardous jobs. People get killed, and you don't just get a little bit hurt on these sites, you get really hurt. So I think, there are only benefits from moving to this new form of energy. Change is hard. Change, you have to plan it. We have to start moving forward. But ultimately, it is the right thing to do, and it's the thing that makes sense. So, no, I agree with you on that. As we wrap up, anything you wanted to share with us that you're working on right now, or to look forward to in the future from you?
Yeah, so anyone who's interested, I had a book just published on the challenge of energy justice. So anyone who's interested in how that big challenge of how we achieve more justice in the energy sector, you can download or buy that online. It was just out at the end of October.
Oh, what's the title?
The Challenge of Energy Justice.
I love it.
And then next year, just watch out for, let's say, my views in a more extended way on the just transition to a low carbon economy. So a small book to be published on that. And both books are relatively small, around 150 pages. So you should be able to sit down with a glass of your drink of choice on a Friday evening and educate yourself until Sunday, be finished the book, and be able to go out and help change the world.
I love that. And guys, buy the book. Never stop learning. This is new to everybody, so we're learning as we go. Never stop learning. Check out his book. I myself am going to look this up because I think that's a great idea. But thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the West Indies. I'm jealous.
You're welcome.
Geez, to live on a Caribbean island, that would be amazing. So take care. Lovely
Thank you.
seeing you again. Keep in touch.
Yeah, see you.